Do you want to see my face though? Like this?
Like
this?
No, not like this.
Like this? Okay.
No.
Hello, how are you? Welcome back to Live by Iris. Today, obviously, is very special because I have two of my favorite persons here with me. Do you guys want to say hi?
Hi, I'm Ariel.
Hi, I'm Evelini.
We like color.
I'm very lucky that my friends love reading as much as I do, but even better is that we read very different genres. You all know I don't read historical fictions, memoir, and romance, but I know they both love historical fictions, and Aria particularly loves memoir, and Evanini sometimes read romance as well, so I believe the books we're talking about later will have pretty good cover from all genres that everyone can get something out of it. So now each of us is going to recommend books. Books are best to read in summer season. We all agree that books recommendations are very subjective, so we are not taking this topic too literally. Not just books that feels like summer, books give summer vibes, but also books with sceneries that taken in summer times or books we simply picked to read in summer breaks. Whatever our take is, as long as we decide it's somehow related to the season. That's our pact. We're gonna start with Evanini first.
Okay, so the first book I would recommend for the summer is a book called The Flatshare by Beth O'Leary. And that book was not really on my radar until I got it accidentally from one of the little free libraries that we have around Portland. They're really fun.
Sweet.
And I quickly read the description and I thought I'll give it a try, and I wasn't really expecting anything from it. But the more I read the book, the more I fell in love with it. It's just such a simple story of two people who fall in love over exchanging some post-it notes. And, you know, there are actually some more serious issues that it touches into, but it's very light and sweet, and even when it's talking about those more serious issues, just a disclosure, it does talk a little bit about, you know, abuse, not physical abuse, but it's more like mental abuse in a relationship, but it's kept really, you know, it weaves into this sweet story, love story between the two of them very nicely, and I thought it would be a very nice and light and romantic story for the summertime.
Does he have that kind of tropes? You know, like Friends, anime, that kind of thing?
Friends, what? Say again?
Like Friends turn to, anime turns to Friends, that kind of tropes.
Yes.
You know, how the romance started with.
Yes, they start out as flatmates, which in England, it's set in England, so it's like an apartment. So they start out sharing an apartment, but they never see each other because she lives in an apartment during the day and he lives in an apartment during the night.
Oh, that's Flatshare. What is it's so literal. I have no idea. So when I was looking at the title, I was like, is that a term that I don't know, like business term or anything? But it's actually flat. Okay. So the setting, is that like the small town setting, or it's more like in the...
No, I think they're in London, and you know, obviously rent's really expensive. And in London, when you have a roommate, you don't call it a roommate; you call it a flatmate. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, that's how the story starts.
Is it common to share, like, I'll have the house during the day and you get it at night?
No, it's like at first that's why I was a little bit skeptical about this book, because I was like, this sounds a little bit impractical and not really realistic, but soon you forget all about the impracticalities because it's just such a sweet thing that happens, that they never actually see each other.
Okay.
They are always just exchanging the post-it notes.
That's so cute.
It's my turn. There are many summer books came to my mind when I piled up the books for this list, but the ultimate summer book to me is Call Me By Your Name by N.J. Asman. If you know me for a while, you know how much I was obsessed with the movie adaptation. This is a very rare case that I actually watched the movie before reading the books. It was back to summer 2020. This movie destroyed me. That we all know that summer the world was upside down, but Call Me By Your Name pretty much took over my whole being. I'm sure every single of my friend had enough about me about the movie this summer. For how much I was crazy about the movie, I thought it's not possible to love the book more. And then came the book. The book is truly over the top good. The prose is hauntingly beautiful. It was just impossible to not fall in love with the writing style. The premises of this book is about a 17-year-old boy, Elio's family. They're hosting a PhD scholar named Oliver for 6 weeks one summer. Oliver is going to work for Elio's father, a university professor. The film is a clear-cut love story narrated in a linear timeline, and the books, on the other hand, the narrative is different. The past, the present, and the future intercept. The experience of reading the book and watching the movie is completely different experience, but both are immersively good. The whole setting is purely as summer as can be, swimming in the pool, sunbathing on the grass, having breakfast in the garden with fresh peaches and pomegranate. If you have already watched and enjoyed the movie, I would 100% recommend still reading the book. It's so satisfying that finally there's ones that I can fully enjoy both book and movie adaptations up together. I was sobbing at the end of the movie, and the end scene in the book is a little bit different than the movie. However, those are one of the best final few pages I have ever read. Okay, now we have Ariel's turn.
My first book that I chose is called Let's Pretend This Never Happened by Jenny Lawson. It's a mostly true memoir, which I think just means she exaggerates some bits, as we all do when we're telling stories about our lives. I think this book is so, so funny. When I think about reading in the summer, I think about being in summery places where you can read, like out in the sun, or by a pool or at the beach. And this is one that doesn't take too much concentration. So you could be sipping a fun cocktail or, watching your kids run around while you're reading it. She tells so many hilarious stories about her life. I cackle when I read this book. Like I was reading it yesterday morning while I was drinking coffee just to kind of refresh my mind. And all of the stories she tells are so relatable to me because she's a blogger. I'm not a blogger, but she's a little bit socially awkward. And she talks about it in detail. And her stories, the things that she thinks and the things that she actually says, are things that I also find myself thinking and not saying because I know they're awkward or uncomfortable. But I think it's really relatable. I think a lot of people probably feel that way and they just don't say those things out loud. So if you're looking for something super, super funny and super light, check out this book because it's a good one.
I'm actually not familiar with her. So she's an influencer. Like, you mean talking about blogger is like more back the time, like blogging? That time of blogger?
So I think this book was published in 2012.
Okay.
So it's a little bit before social media got really huge. So like Facebook was around and Twitter was around, but not really anything else.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna back to Evanini.
Okay. So the second book I'm going to talk about is, I have to look up the name.
Look up your list.
Yeah, I have.
Very short list of 4 books.
Do you have yours memorized, Iris?
Oh yeah, hold on. Let me grab my phone. Can I have my phone?
Okay, so my next book is a book called Be Brief and Tell Them Everything by Brad Listy. And again, this is not a book that I had on my list, on my radar at all, but sometimes I just go to the library and I just let myself wander and find something new that I wasn't really planning on reading, and this is one of those books. It's a memoir, but it kind of reads like a novel a little bit, which is the first interesting part that I thought about it. But this book is not particularly like happy and, light that you would expect for the summer. But I think that for me, summer books can also be something more like something that takes you on a journey, and this book definitely took me on a whole journey. So Brad has a special needs son, and him and his wife had several pregnancy losses before they had their son, and the story of how they deal with their pain. And it's so real, and he's so real and so raw about it, and there's nothing like, he's not trying to make it feel like, oh, but it's all good. He's just being very, very real about how much these things hurt, and how he ends up on this journey to kind of figure out, how am I going to dig myself out of this hole that is, having these really painful things happening to us all the time. And I just love how he was so honest about it, and how he was really like, not in a like depressing way, but yes, his life was really sad, and it was really hard. Having a special needs kid is really hard, and having all these things happen to you is really hard. And he was admitting that at the same time as kind of discovering that obviously he couldn't go on like that forever, just feeling sorry for himself forever, that he had to find a way to like deal with those feelings and deal with that pain. And he goes on to experiment with some psychedelics, and I also found that part of the book very interesting, because like his friend recommended that he did that, and it took him a really long time to make that decision to do it. And when he finally did, the things that he discovered about himself.
Okay, the next one I want to talk about is How High We Can Go in the Dark by
Sequoia Nagamatsu?
Yes, Sequoia Nagamatsu. Okay. This is a science fiction short stories collection set in the future, but also very realistic, kind of like what if COVID-19 happened in the future, that kind of vibes. This is my favorite types of science fiction, that stories that explore the consequences rooted in the science, but through the lens of the daily life. The pandemic may be happening on a global scale, but in the book, they are relayed in a very personal way. Each chapter is a new story, told through a very new perspective, but many of them are intertwined to give us a wide variety of people through their views of the end of the world. This book reminds me of Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell in terms of the science fiction vibe, the multi-point of view narrative, and the cross-generational storytelling. The story follows the lives of multiple characters in the aftermath of a world-changing pandemic. The book started as a story in Siberia, which is actually an extremely cold climate in a frozen land. However, the rest of the stories all give the summer vibes, like most of the post-apocalypse world, that climate change is one of the impacts. So often the sceneries are in either deserted area with climate temperature rises, and many descriptions of the hot seasons. So when read the stories, the imaginaries are mostly in bright and hot days, that kind of feeling. Featuring everything from euthanasia roller coasters to talking pigs. It is mind-blowing, but at the same time easy to read through. Perfect for the vacation read, and it makes you think a lot at the same time.
Awesome.
Okay,
all of these books sound so cool.
Yeah, it sounds
I
awesome.
want to read more books.
Are you being cut off again? Okay. Aria's turn.
Oh, are we still recording?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My second book is called The Murmur of Bees by Sofia Segovia. I read this book at kind of when we were in the thick of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think what I found so interesting, it was kind of an accident. I liked the cover art, and that's why I downloaded it. But it's largely talking about the Spanish influenza and how it ripped through Mexico and destroyed so many families and killed so many people. It was just really interesting to me to read about how, here we are in modern day with all of the technology, all of the information that we had. If something happened across the world, we knew about it moments later. 100 years ago, that wasn't the case. They were transmitting disease from the mail carriers because everything was hand carried. it also takes place in Mexico, which is why I chose it to talk about summer, because Mexico's hot most of the year. And a large part of the story talks about planting and growing an orange orchard, which is another thing that makes me feel very summery.
Definitely.
Yeah. It's a great read. There's a lot of whimsy in it that I found kind of unexpected, but also a lot of historical information that speaks to the nerd in me. It's a good book. It's one that I've read twice already because I enjoyed it so much.
And me again?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the next book I'm going to talk about is a book called Nightbitch by Rachel Yoder. And this book is just a really crazy ride. Again, it's not like necessarily set in a summer setting, but it's just like a really crazy story of a new mother who believes that she's turning into a dog, and from there things just go downhill. But obviously it's not really about her thinking that she's turning into a dog. It's a lot of social commentary about motherhood and about how women are very often kind of forgotten after they become mothers, and how everything changes and how your friendships kind of fall off, and you have to reimagine and rediscover yourself, and how she's kind of losing her mind a little bit, and she's going through these changes, and she's having these experiences that make her truly believe that she's turning into a dog, and how also she's like not able to say it to people because obviously that would be crazy thing to say, and I think that that's a very good like example of a lot of things that go through when you go through, like when you become a mom and so many things are going through your mind and you're like, am I going crazy? Am I like imagining this? Am I the only one? Am I,
Oh, I had that all the time.
Yes. Yes. And
the title didn't ring the bell, but when you talking about the premises, I believe several people told me about this book.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I love about this book is that it's this crazy journey that she goes through, but at the end that she turns it into something really amazing that actually is gonna end up touching a lot of people with her experience of turning into a dog. And it's like you're reading it and it's not like I was thinking like, oh, this doesn't make any sense. It somehow made complete sense to me, everything that she was going through and she was turning into a dog. Yeah, so I love books like that. I love a book that has like a story that is very unexpected, but it doesn't feel, how sometimes you watch like a TV show and it feels like, oh, come on guys, are you serious? But like the way she writes it and the way she's experiencing things is very relatable. Even though I never thought I was turning into a dog, I can still relate to her so deeply with everything that she's going through with motherhood and all her interactions with the other moms and how she doesn't feel like she fits in with anybody. And it's so hard to find your group of people, that who understand you and who will,
like have you guys.
Yes.
So what if ask you guys to imagine one animal to turn into? What would be?
Ooh, to turn into
Giraffe.
No, I don't want to be a giraffe.
I would be cat.
Oh,
for sure.
I would like to be a bird, but I think it's just because I really want to experience like that weightlessness. Yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah.
What about you?
Well, I love pandas, but when I think about
Be
turning
lazy.
into a panda, yeah, that would be a good life. Being lazy, eating all day, and just playing in the snow.
And everybody thinks you're
cold.
cute.
Everyone wants to hold you.
Okay.
I guess that would be a good life.
Okay, my turn for the third one.
Yeah.
Okay, my next book is actually a manga to recommend. So I got everybody covered, I guess. This book is called Yokohama, Kaidashi, Kikou. Now, when it comes to manga, I'm very picky about the art style and the storyline, and this series are absolutely my favorite. I don't know if you guys read manga at all, but it's also set in post-apocalypse worldview. It follows the story of Alpha. She's an android, and from her everyday living in a countryside. We got to peek the end of the world sceneries. Japan is dying, the roads are crumbling, and the sea is flooding the land. People are abandoning the country to cluster in cities. The atmosphere of the series is so quiet, all about just simple human living. And the most amazing thing is there's nothing really happens in this manga. Just a slice of life. And the drawings are the most whimsical and beautiful artwork that you can make you feel like you can hear things while looking at the pictures. The ocean waves, the cicada scenes, and the beach shines in the cool summer night, that kind of feeling. So all of the summer elements within the seaside country town. So all about the ambient, atmospheric, just so good.
Okay, so my next book is called Papertowns by John Green. I feel like he's become a really popular author in the past few years because some of his books have been turned into movies. I really liked Papertowns. The plot is about a boy that goes looking for his kind of crush. She disappears and he's on the hunt for her, and in doing so they discover this concept of a paper town, which back before we had the internet, back when things were being made by hand, the people that drew maps would hide towns that didn't actually exist, so that if somebody copied their map, if they included this town that didn't exist, they would know that it had been copied illegally. So it's just kind of a fun, interesting coming of age story. The character interactions are great. I don't know. It's about the journey, right? Like,
Do you know who they're casting? Is that a TV show?
I don't know
or
if
movie?
this one has been turned into a book.
Okay.
He wrote The Fault in Our Stars.
Oh,
and
yeah.
turned that
I
one
see.
into a movie fairly recently.
Several of them, I think.
Yeah, I think they're more. That's just the one at the top of my head right now.
I haven't watched it yet, but I heard that it's...
That's heartbreaking. Yeah.
My last book that I'm going to recommend today is Americanah by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I read her book, Half of a Yellow Sun, many, many, many years ago, and I loved the way she writes and how she describes, her beautiful country, Nigeria. And this one is a lot more modern. Although it kind of spans, across, but of course the story. But because I've been an immigrant now for almost 20 years, I love reading books from the point of view of immigrants and how they experience things, and how a lot of things, like, even though we're from completely different cultures, how a lot of things are so relatable, between those experiences. And that's what I loved about this book. And it's just, again, it's about this whole journey from, Nigeria to her going to a different country and leaving there. And I love the way she describes, like, the struggles and the, how you have to kind of reinvent yourself when you're going into a new culture and a new country, and how so much of yourself gets lost in that translation. I've read this quote once, and it said, it's not related to this book, but it said, "I will always be a translation." And it's like, when you're not communicating in your first language, it's like you can never be that you again. And I love this book because of that. And I think it's a beautiful way to experience her, like, Nigerian, heritage. I love the way she describes all that. But I also love the story of how this character came to America and how the experiences that the character had here. Yeah.
And the books make you think about summer reads because...
Well, again, I think it's about the journey. You know, I think it's like it takes you on a whole journey of her, you know, obviously the actual journey of coming to America, but also the journey of discovery of so many things when you see yourself in that new situation. So I think that's what I look for in like summer books.
It's like becoming.
Definitely.
Yes.
I think that resonates with me when we think about summer, because growing up in school, summer was your break.
Right.
And you got a chance to really like think about what you were outside of the framework of school, and then you come back into school and
you have a new chance to
Yeah.
be something else if you wanted to, and to kind
Time
of like
to-
restart. Yeah.
Self-reflect time of the year.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna have Ariel to do her last book first, so that I will end with mine.
the last book that I wanted to share with you guys is called The Alice Network by Kate Quinn. I am a sucker for history. This story is written in dual timelines, and then they kind of converge to tell the story. It's set a lot of it takes place in France, and I absolutely love French culture.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that probably had a lot to do with why I loved it so much. But the story is about women spies as they, helped with the war that was happening at the time of the story. They would have interactions with men. The men didn't realize that they were spies, and then they would, communicate the information that they heard from the men during their relations. I know it seems kind of like a dark story, and it is. It's very dramatic. But there's so much adventure, and I think that's why I recommend this story as a summer read, because
Even though they're in the winter outfit.
I mean, it crosses different seasons. It's not like it's all
Definitely.
just in a cold season, but the aspect of adventure, I think, and especially adventure for women back before women were allowed to do so many things.
It is set in the World War Second or the first?
I'm not positive. Don't quote me which one it is, but one of the world wars. It's just a super cool story about how brave these women were to do these things that could have gotten them killed had they been found out. Just a super cool take on the things that the women were doing to help with war efforts at the time.
Definitely. Do you think this is based on the true story, or it's just fiction?
I think so. I don't know that the women were actually called the Alice Network, but there was a group of women that were doing these things.
So the based of the
specifically.
more historical.
Yeah.
Last but not least, I'm going to bring up the classics 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Marquez. If you haven't read this book, what are you waiting for? Read this summer and be ready to be blown away by Marquez's writing. And it's like the 100 years multi-generations family saga. Marquez's magic realism is insane. There are characters eating dirt, coming back from dead, spreading a plague of contagious insomnia, and enjoying that kind of nice thunderstorm of yellow flowers. It's all presented in such a natural light that at first you think it's crazy, but after reading like 5 chapters, it starts making sense. I think nobody writes like him, and the crazy thing is there are about 20 main characters share only like 4 names. Like I have to refer back to this family diagram like all the times. All the Buendia men share the name either Jose Arcadia or Arellano. The story happened in a fictional town named Macondo in Colombia. Overall gives a sensation of sitting in a garden on a warm summer day, that kind of vibes. Anyway, this book is one of the most beautifully written books that I've ever read. I also love Marques's Love in the Time of Cholera, but still, this book is one of my all-time favorites. We did it. Okay, can someone make a conclusion?
Thank you guys for spending your afternoon with us. Make sure you check out some of these stories because we all really enjoyed them and we think that you will too.
Yeah, I hope we can do
I'm gonna
this
put some
another
of these
time.
in my list. Yeah.
Maybe tomorrow in the beach house we can do some just fun tag, just like reading habit like tag, that kind of fun thing, just not like the. Okay, cool. Yeah. Bye. Oh my